record on this computer. Share screen. All right. We are off to the races. Okay. Would somebody just chat in and make sure you've got me on, you can hear me and see my screen? If you just want to give me a quick confirm there, I would appreciate it. Okay. All right, cool. Thank you, sir. Here we go. All right. Sweet. All right, we're off to the races then. So welcome to the session here on LTE. So the last time we did an overview of all the different kind of wireless technologies that I guess I would classify as wireless IoT, at least for Advantech. Some that aren't in there, you know, Zigbee, Bluetooth, I kind of left those out, but that's okay. Today we're going to talk about Advantech's LTE solutions, and I think many of you have seen kind of the basics on this before, so I might go just a little bit more in depth here. And all right, very funny, you guys. Yes, I have a beard now. Isn't that weird? I know. Well, listen, if you thought that was funny, today we're going to be talking about routers. Get it? That's a dad joke right there. Not these kind of routers. We'll talk about the IP routing kind instead. Okay. Yeah, so like last time, we'll keep it fairly short. I want to make sure that it's short enough that people don't drop off or decline, you know, because of time. And then we can chat in some questions at the end. And I'll share, like last time, I'll share the deck and the recording for people who couldn't be here. All right, so we'll look at our gateway portfolio, or we can talk about the distinction between router and gateway terminology. But basically, when I'm saying gateway, I'm saying a router on steroids, kind of, and that's what our LTE devices are. Some competitive positioning against Cradlepoint, which is certainly more common on your guys' side. E1 shows up on the industrial IoT side too. And we'll do a quick look at like introducing private LTE and just, I don't know, maybe some talking points on 5G. And of course, use cases sprinkled throughout. Okay, remember last time I introduced these two categories, right? It's like devices that require a SIM and devices that don't. Today, obviously, we're talking about devices that do require SIM cards, specifically the cellular routers. That's what we'll cover today. Things like Wizard, LoRaWAN, Wi-Fi, obviously don't require SIM cards. I also introduced this metaphor of a highway for wireless data. So today we'll be talking about, just to review, I was saying that LTE networks that are developed by carriers are akin to a wireless data highway that's been built and for which carriers charge access fees, right? The SIM data plan. Whereas the path on the right-hand side of the screen is unlicensed. It's like the bike path, right? It's like Wizard, wireless, mesh, LoRaWAN, things like that. So today we'll talk about this ICR line and then the SmartFlex and SmartStart line. Specifically, again, referencing that grid I had showed, or that table I showed last time. We'll cover LTE, this high-speed Cat 1 through Cat 4. Again, the different categories of LTE. The smaller the cat category, the lower the speed. And then category M for machine type communication is this ICR 3211. So we'll go through some use cases and show you the videos here. I have a slide for each device, and so I'll just include this slide in the deck so that you know, sometimes people ask, hey, do you have one slide that shows our cellular routers? And there's a lot to show, and you always make trade-offs to what you include and don't include. For this, for most purposes, I use this slide. It's like the product comparison across all of our routers. It addresses the main questions people have: speed, interfaces, what carriers it works on. The answer is all of them except for Sprint. And then next lesson or session or whatever, we'll talk about the software, the VPN software and management software. I'll just touch on that today. So I guess I don't want to go, well, like I said, I'll go through one slide for each of these and show you the features in more detail. But across the family, if there was a second slide to include, you know, with a quick intro to a customer, it would be this slide, the previous one here, right? And then this one, I think, because irrespective of the hardware, look of the routers, they all support dual SIM, and a carrier module that allows operation across multiple different carriers. So you don't have to use one model for Verizon and one model for Sprint, for example. Pretty darn good warranty, actually, competitively what's out there. This is 3 years is ahead of the pack, I would say. The enterprise routing software is akin to what you would get in a Cisco device, with some exceptions, obviously, but it's license free. You don't have to pay for this advanced security and routing. The App Store, we call them user modules or router apps. It doesn't really matter. The point is there are different software value add scripts, or it's like the App Store. I guess that's why we call it that. To support Modbus, Python, Node-RED, a lot of different protocols out there. Oh shoot, hold on. I see that. I'm bad because I always get distracted by chats, but I think that's kind of the point. So give me just a second. Oh yeah, Peter had a question about supporting eSIM. Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. And I know you asked me that privately, but it's actually worth mentioning. Let me save that for now because I'll talk about it on the ICR. The ICR series does support eSIM, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, sorry. Cool capability. Yeah, so eSIM as well as a dual SIM. It's a Linux operating system, so you're not loading you're not doing development on the device necessarily and putting entire big IoT cloud agents on the device, but there are a lot of tie-ins to cloud platforms that we can support. So there is, I would call it light programmability compared to our true PC or SOM type products. Value-added software, so VPN portal, I'll talk about that. That's really, really cool. And a bunch of accessories. And I think I have a slide where I kind of intro some accessories, and I brought some here to show you, just show and tell kind of thing. Right, okay, so the product profiles themselves. So, all right, so the SmartStart, here we go. All right, so the SmartStart, you guys, I brought this to kickoff meetings. I mentioned the dual SIM, right, SIM slots there. So SmartStart is super cost effective, I guess, cost efficient. So it's gonna be our lowest model in really high volume. It's down in the mid 200s probably. Optional Wi-Fi, I don't think this model has the Wi-Fi. No, this is just, you'll see an antenna. Oh, this does have Wi-Fi, sorry. So you'll see an antenna for, it says ANT and DIV, so antenna and diversity. So there's 2 antennas required for LTE category 1 and up. Again, if it's category 1 LTE or up, we really recommend, or I guess sort of require, 2 antennas. And then this has 802.11bgn Wi-Fi with just the 1 antenna there. Pretty simple product. LTE category 1 means, you see the LTE 1 to Cat 4. Cat 4 is just the European version, so don't necessarily worry about that now. In the US, we support LTE Cat 1 on this. Serial connection, Ethernet connection, Wi-Fi connection. So that's the SmartStart. Use case here for SmartStart. This is just simple access to a computer in a cabinet in a remote location. There's a lot of, I mean, in this case, we're actually collecting, or the computer that we're connected to, I should say, is collecting data about oil field, like well site byproducts, so all the nasty stuff that is created during a fracking operation, essentially, and things like, it doesn't matter, a bunch of complex chemical, chemistry words probably. The point is they affect the lubrication of the equipment, the wear and tear, the life, potentially poisonous, hazardous material for technicians and people on site. So we're just taking the SmartStart, this customer, Restream Solutions, takes a SmartStart, puts it in that gray box there, plumbs an antenna up to the top. I think you can see the antenna in that picture. And shame on them, they're just using 1 antenna, it looks like, although they might have another one inside. And then makes an LTE connection. So simple, not a lot of frills. We're not really using any of the, in this case, it's really being used almost as an IP pass-through device, right? It gets an IP address from the carrier SIM. The carrier network says your IP address is whatever it is. And then the application, the web application is accessing the PC through the carrier network. So it's great to have industrial temperature ratings, that's required, but we're not using any special fancy Python or Azure or anything in that case. Okay, contrast that with the SmartFlex router right here. Hopefully you can see that. Hopefully you can see. I'm just going to check and see if you guys can, or whatever. I'm sure you can see it. The SmartFlex router, which I'll show you an application on this next slide, an application where the customer used quite a bit of the smarts, the secret sauce in this. But this is faster, so LTE category 3 in the US. Again, dual SIM slots here. You see a slot here for an SD card for data logging and for extra memory, for potentially, you know, software that would live there using that expanded memory capacity. Whereas the SmartStart has this polycarbonate, plastic case. This has a pretty hardcore aluminum case, just feels more solid. And the key thing here, the reason we call it SmartFlex is because, as the name implies, it's more flexible. So if you look at that third or fourth point there, this particular option has the additional 3-port switch. We could have added RS-232 here. We could have added power over Ethernet capability here. GPS is standard. You see the GPS antenna here. That's standard on the SmartFlex. I showed you the SD card on the back right there. This also has a USB port support somewhere right there. Yep, I just lost it. And again, just to walk through the antennas. So in this case, there's the primary antenna, the diversity antenna, the GPS antenna. Those are 3 are standard on the SmartFlex. And then Wi-Fi is optional, and you see 802.11 BGN single port, single antenna connector here. But it ships with a DIN rail clip that mounts on the back there, and yeah, so that is the SmartFlex. One other thing is it does support a low power mode, which is pretty slick for solar powered applications. So it can just kind of go to sleep and then wake back up on an I/O input, so or programmatically wake up. Okay, SmartFlex. And feel free again, just chat in questions. 56 people, holy cow, that's great. That's great. Thanks for joining, guys. Now I kind of forget if oh no, I didn't show this example last time. That would be bad. So here's a case where a company called Hamilton Boiler, or I guess Hamilton Engineering is their name, technically, has a pretty advanced facility monitoring solution, specifically the boilers for something that's going to heat like a high-rise building or a hospital or a hotel or a college campus, something like that. And they needed to create a custom application. Well, okay, what we sold them was a 4G LTE SmartFlex router, right? They needed a USB port to connect extra flash disks for memory. They needed RS-232 serial ports. What they're doing is they're monitoring this boiler system. And I guess technically they're monitoring the system that's monitoring the boiler system. And we've got a custom user module that's helping with protocol conversion from their PLC, and which enabled them to build. You see this dashboard here on the top, or the top left picture anyway. That's their system is collecting these data points on this boiler system, sending alarms, and that kind of thing. So that's again, I hope I'm not going too fast. Let's check the time here. Okay, that's pretty good. So SmartFlex, great fit there. I will say, you know, for all the folks who are selling into energy applications, the SmartFlex, specifically oil and gas applications, the SmartFlex is the only unit that has Class 1 Div 2 or ATEX certification. So that's pretty rare. It's especially rare to have like an LTE plus switch, including PoE optional, in Class 1 Div 2. I'm sorry, PoE wouldn't, the PoE model is not Class 1 Div 2. I take that back. Anyway, Class 1 Div 2 is actually very, it's an important differentiator for this particular model. And I think I've shared previously different examples where we used it because we had Class 1 Div 2 in oil and gas applications. Okay, so the newer kid on the block here is the ICR 3241, and I think I was showing these real briefly in the last session, but I'll spend just a bit more time on this. So the ICR platform, industrial cellular router platform, has two variants. One is the 3241, which looks like this with Ethernet, LTE Category 4 radio module embedded, two antenna ports for LTE. Excuse me. You'll see Wi-Fi, so dual band Wi-Fi with the two 802.11ac dual band Wi-Fi. See the two antenna ports there for Wi-Fi, and then one for GPS. So that's physically that's what the ICR 3241 looks like. Okay, that's LTE Category 4. Now, the little sibling to this, the ICR 3211, is the exact same. Okay, except there's no GPS or Wi-Fi, and there's only one antenna connection. All right. Why is that? That's because that's LTE Cat M1, which only requires one antenna and is lower power, same list price as the SmartStart for that version, but that's the ICR 3241 and 3211 essentially. Okay, and again, I hope you can see these. Chat if I'm like off screen or something. Dual SIM here. I removed the case to show just I removed the SIM plate cover to show dual SIM there, a grounding screw, serial connection here, and then Ethernet ports here. Now, Peter asked about the eSIM. If we took the lid off this and voided the warranty, we'd see an eSIM keep out on this board. Okay, so what's an eSIM? An eSIM is the terminology can get confusing. So when I say eSIM, I mean an embedded SIM. Maybe I should call it an embedded SIM that's on the board at shipment. Okay, so I think, frankly, the reason that I pushed for this in our roadmap a year ago was I think and continue to think that there are embedded key accounts that are high enough volume and that are using enough of our supply chain processes that we can sell them eSIM connectivity and, coming soon, SIM card connectivity as well, web access SIM. More on that later. That's just a teaser. Don't hold me to that, or don't ask a bunch of detailed questions because we're still in the process of productizing the SIM capability. But the point is, yes, this has an eSIM, and you can switch between. You could have an eSIM and have an alternate backup SIM in one SIM slot, but it will only accommodate two functioning SIMs, one eSIM and then one external SIM. Again, we can talk more about that, but the value of an eSIM is, the streamlining of the supply chain. The SIM is included during production, powering the device on, the SIM's already there, it finds a connection and it goes with it. Potentially more, well, certainly more rugged, excuse me. That's not coronavirus. And more rugged. So sometimes these SIMs in high heat scenarios can warp or become disconnected. eSIM would be a little more rugged in that setting. Okay, also cool about the ICR 3241 and 3211, lots more storage, lots of more powerful CPU. So we're hosting more applications. It doesn't have Docker support. That's going to come in the ICR 4000. I'll show a slide on that. But this is the latest and greatest today. One more mention of the ICR 3211, which looks like this, right? It's got a built-in supercapacitor that gives, so the idea here is, because the Cat M1 radio is lower power, it can still communicate for a little while when the power is disconnected. So we put a supercapacitor in there for a use case that says, hey, I'm connected to a PC or some device, and I want to be able to send a message before I lose power, so that my user doesn't think that I just lost connection because of a SIM problem or a network problem. Okay, that's the use case for the low power. I'm sorry, supercapacitor on the 3211. Okay, good. Some questions. All right. Yes, this is great. How was cell reception within? Oh, Matt's asking about, yes, cell reception was within the building. For the, oh, you're going back to the Hamilton example. I don't believe that they actually used GPS in this case. If this is what you're referencing, Matt, I don't think that they used GPS here because it won't work very well. It won't work at all. We do have, Bosch and Lom, we talk about them a lot. They're using a location mechanism, and you can talk to Mike and Tyler more about this, but they basically use a Google Maps API, and then they sort of triangulate based on nearby cell towers. It's not something that we wrote. I think it's kind of cool, and I've thought about whether we should expose that, but you can do location-based stuff with just with the cell signals, cell tower locations, is what I'm trying to say. All right, some more questions here. This is great. Come on here. Okay. Yeah. Oh man, this is great. Okay. So yeah, FirstNet similar to band 14. Yes, FirstNet is band 14. Peter, good, really good question. So yeah, I kind of zoomed over that. I shouldn't. The ICR 3241 supports FirstNet, i.e. band 14, which is it's a first responder network that AT&T developed and has launched. Caltrans uses it. It looks like TxDOT is going to be using it. So FirstNet is really important, as a priority access method for first responders. So people in the security, even first responder support, right? Red Cross, I don't know, people who are supporting first responders can use FirstNet. Life cycle on the ICR 3241, good question, Michael. So this is going to be, SmartFlex has been around for 7 years, I think it's 7 years. It predates me joining. I remember competing against them when I was with Digi. So that's, this life cycle questions with cell routers can be difficult to answer, because a lot of times the underlying radio technology will phase out. At least that was the case maybe when we would answer the question 5 years ago. Now LTE is not going anywhere. 5G is not going to replace LTE. They're still building out LTE networks. I'll talk about that with the 5G discussion. This ICR product is going to be around at least until 2025. I'm certain of that. If it's not 2028, I'd kind of be surprised too. So you're still got a lot of ramp on this. With ICR, it will support all other cellular routers. So it'll support AT&T, Verizon, every cellular provider in North and South America, with the exception of Sprint. This or its cousin, the ICR 3232, will work on. And then there's versions for Australia and Europe and Asia. You gotta be kidding me. I gotta plug in my PC. Hold that thought. All right, very good. Okay,